Ultra Prime want to do it, plenty of options realistically for them. I think Zeri was open last draft though as well.
No, Zeri was banned last game.
Was she banned?
Okay,
I mean,
she was banned by Ultra Prime, I think. So Elk kind of getting away with murder on this one, honestly.
Yeah, and I would love to know what they're gonna pair it with, because I feel like, you know, the sort of traditional pairing that we saw when Zeri came out was very commonly with that Yuumi. Yuumi is still very, very strong. I feel like it does, however, kind of strip away some of your early agency tools, which I know a lot of LPL teams typically don't like to have their supports off those engage options. So the other pairing that's kind of coming because of that, you see a lot of the Nautilus with that Zeri, and whether or not we get that combo, we'll have to see. And I want to know whether or not Assum would be willing to pull out the Twitch. It's something that we saw a whole bunch of in the LEC over the weekend when Zeri was up and available. But it seems like we're just going to get the Kalista, which was left up, and they will probably just try and hold that support counter pick for as long as possible. It's what you really want to try and do with Kalista, because 1-to-1 with a lot of these AD carry matchups, she does win. The important part is making sure that your support matchup also wins, gives you setup, and kind of enables you to do what you want to do inside of the lane, which is just complete domination.
Yeah, it certainly does. I'm interested to see if this will be locked in. Oh, come on, man. Hacker's already played the Rek'Sai once this split. I got baited by the hover. It's going to be a Poppy in the end, which, you know, against Kalista, fantastic pick. Against the Viego, also, his W can be denied by the Poppy. So it's a nice lock-in here for Hacker, and you can still have that early productivity.
Yeah, exactly. And point-and-click CC goes really well. Headbutt Pulverize, really easy to try and set Assum up inside of some chain CC. And on the opposite side, we'll see what LGD want to do with this Alistar there. I honestly wouldn't mind seeing a Braum in this kind of situation. I think you have a whole bunch of CC potential with the likes of the Viego being able to set up those concussive blows super quick, with the Spectral Maw as well. But again, LPL supports, man, they want to just have the proactive tools in their back pocket. We've seen the Nautilus hover. Amumu is also another very common pairing we've been seeing on 12-12 with the buff. Was it Mana Cost, I believe, of that Amumu bandage toss, and that's the pairing that we're going to get in the bottom side. So bans now. I think you're on LGD's side, you're probably just trying to limit what Zoom can pick after game one. I would imagine that's the angle that they're going to go for. Probably remove away the Gwen. I would like to see them either ban away the GP or pick it on R4, because I think Gangplank as a champion really shuts down a lot of what Kalista can do in some of the mid-game team fights just by kind of dropping the Cannon Barrage on the head. For now, they're going to look towards Cryin champion pool though with the Lissandra ban.
Yeah, so removing those roaming mid laners once again. We'll see where Ultra Prime are going to go, whether they do try and remove that Gangplank or whether or not they try and get that Gangplank themselves. It's going to be an interesting one, certainly for the side of Ultra Prime, because last time it felt like they were setting up for Zoom, right? They went for the Gnar ban to make sure that there was no safe blind for Fearness to take into the potential Gwen. Gwen so far making it through the pick and ban. We'll see if that continues to be the case, though.
Yeah, because I feel like Gangplank in my mind is pretty high priority here. I think when you're the Kalista team, having Gangplank just, you know, adds the additional pressure of having a global to support what you want to do on the bottom side with the relentless aggression. But also for Ultra Prime, it can kind of help stave off some of that pressure in the early game, but then also work as a pretty strong tool to try and shut down Kalista's team fighting prowess if she's kind of left unattended in some of those longer exchanges. We'll see whether or not LGD want to try and prioritize it or not. 2 mid lane bans with the Lissandra and the Talia, but also on the opposite side, it's Azir, Ahri. So now we are starting to look towards things like the LeBlanc. You still do, of course, have some of the other control mages, things like the Viktor, things like the Corki, dare I say, it's just going to appear behind me. But LeBlanc being hovered, I think it would just kind of set the tone for LGD are kind of currently drafting, right? But also, I think if you are dealing with Zeri plus Corki, if you go towards that LeBlanc here, that would be a really, really dangerous combination of just range and poke. So I like the fact that they've actually taken this away.
Okay, so denying the Corki from Cryin, trying to deny some of that poke, and it is a pick that Cryin had played a couple of times so far this split. Now, we saw the Gnar ban in game number 1. It felt like that was Ultra Prime's read on, like, this is your safe blind top laner. And because that's not banned, they're saying, okay, well, Gnar's not banned. We need to blind pick. Let's go for that for Zoom. So Zoom having safety up in the top side. Now we just need a mid laner to go up against the Corki. But the Azir is gone, which means Cryin has to go for a different style here. This is not a typical Cryin champion.
Yeah, not per se, but I think it fits the composition all right. The only issue I will definitely say is you do see this matchup a lot, And as things go on, the Corki just takes over, right? It's just how Corki is anyway, but it feels like you get to a point where Corki just like hits level 16, and those regular rockets will still deal like 700 damage to your health bar as a squishy. It does get pretty oppressive, but there is definitely a brief window where as the Viktor, you're a little bit stronger, you have a lot of agency for yourself. We'll see whether or not Cryin will look to try and abuse that brief window. And like you said, Zoom gets his hands on the Gnar, was banned last game, and Fearness isn't going to take any particular you know, sort of hard counter matchup into this Gnar or anything like that. Just going to go towards the Sejuani, trying to set up 4 team fights. It felt like LGD were relatively limited in their engaged tools, only really the Amumu, so picking up this Sejuani in the top side is definitely going to open up some of those, you know, agency tools and options to try and find team fights when and where they want.
Yeah, I mean, Fearness basically saying, look, I liked game 1. Game 1 was good for me. The start of things went very well. He certainly enjoyed playing the Sejuani, so going for that one once again. Kind of interesting compositions here. I feel like, obviously, a totally different bottom lane, right? Zeri versus Kalista, where we had Jinx of Phelios for game number 1. A totally different style, but kind of matches up to the level of aggression that we saw in the bottom lane in game number 1. I feel like we could very likely see a similar level of aggression here for game number 2, especially from the side of that Kalista. Like, I feel like maybe LGD could find themselves with the advantage in the 2v2 this time around.
Yes, in the 2v2 they definitely should. My only concern is I think when you start to broaden that to the sort of 3v3 perspective, there is a lot of shutdown potential onto a lot of the champions that have been drafted by LGD just by Poppy existing with steadfast presence. If she's just kind of on top of her carries, the engages should almost always be nullified. I think that's definitely a pretty big worry. Also, of course, just by nature, I think we saw Arki in the previous series actually piling Poppy. I don't think it was ever into Kalista, but obviously here, you kind of just get on top of Kalista, press your W, all of a sudden she just doesn't have a passive. She has to play like a regular AD carry until that steadfast presence comes off. And in that duration of time, it's very easy to try and get on top of her as Zoom, as ShiauC if you've got the flash. We'll see what Hacker is able to get done in sort of those early game exchanges, because again, it's more about the reactive play, I feel like, for Ultra Prime here, trying to shut down that bottom side.
The thing is, as well, it's not even like playing like a normal AD carry either. Because of that steadfast presence, you get knocked up if you go for the dash. So you have to be very careful with your clicking to not dash. It's hard not to dash on Kalista.
Yeah, like you're in the mindset of playing Kalista, right? For those that don't know, you kind of have to... How do I even phrase it? I guess you kind of like double input to like
you gotta
right click
different.
You have to click different. You have to click a lot differently to when you typically play a regular AD carry, where you kind of have to click, and then as your auto kind of travels, you have to click again to the direction you want to hop. It's muscle memory that you have to build, right? And if you're in that mindset of playing Kalista, sometimes maybe you just kind of accidentally do it once whilst you're trying to auto attack and get away with Hacker on your face, and that's all it takes to get grounded. All of a sudden you can't flash, and then there's a big Alistar on top of your head. But I like what LGD are doing here. I think if they're going to try and go for the late invade, try and push Hacker away, the only problem is look towards the top side, because Hacker is actually on Quay's Raptors as well. There was a lot of pings that came out as he's on the wall. So, yeah, they know. So it's just going to be a trade. But map split, when you have the Kalista lane, you're always going to feel great about that. Keeping that 2v2 isolated and always having the pressure to move down there, it's going to feel pretty bad in the early stages for Elk and ShiauC.
Speaking of, it's already going to be an all-in on the bottom side.
Yeah.
Ignite used as well, as Assum looks for the Ren there. Not quite enough damage, but damn, they were close.
Yeah, and I mean, just great understanding of the matchup as well when you just kind of think about it. What does Alistar typically have? A very weak level 1, and now Elk.
Oh, does he though? Flashes in for the knockable to Assum. There's an Ignite, and he just killed himself. The answer is yes. Yes, he does.
No.
I shouldn't have questioned you. Oh, it's Elk as well. It's an absolute disaster for Ultra Prime.
Oh, it's a nightmare, man. I don't even, like, does ShiauC think that maybe they have lethal? It's really hard to know what goes through the head there of ShiauC, but now they're going to miss out on this wave. I think maybe because they just felt like they had a very brief window, but I was literally about to make the point. What does Alistar have? A really weak level 1. LGD just have a great understanding of that, trying to abuse it with the double bandage toss. They almost all in him before they even kill any creeps. I mean, Elk has 1 CS. He didn't get to even farm on the wave. I mean, we're getting the replay here. And just the initial, again, Assum, JinJiao, they just step up, right? Push Elk back, and even I think they're missing XP on that on the wave as this trade is going on. ShiauC almost drops 1 more ore, I think, and the Ren damage would have been enough. And then ShiauC, 150, he's ticking up in pots. he just goes for the double knockup. I'm not too sure why. He just feels like maybe he has to save Elk's life because Elk would have died, I guess. But it's strange. Yeah. It's really, really strange. And Elk, there's a ward there. And I'm pretty sure maybe Quay pathed towards the tri-bush, and he didn't know that Viego was going to be in that bush. But he should have a pretty good idea that he's probably still on the bottom side, and unfortunately kind of just gives over his life.
Yeah. I mean, that was tough. That was really tough for Ultra Prime. I mean, look, Elk has been known to make mistakes during the laning phase, to make mistakes when it comes to transitioning in the mid-game. I feel like that is a bit of a classic from Elk there. But hey, look, we came into this game where we said we could have an aggressive 2v2 from LGD. Well, boy, were we right, because my god, the aggression from Assum and JinJiao. This is much more of what I was expecting coming into the series than what we saw in game number 1, right? Haichao has already used his Valkyrie. He's fine. He's fine. Yeah. You know, we saw a lot of aggression despite the Aphelios and Jinx matchup, but this kind of composition was much more what we were expecting from Assum and JinJiao.
Yes, absolutely. And they've been playing it superbly. Great understanding of that level 1, level 2. And it just looks like they're just going to continually try and bully Elk and ShiauC out. He just about managed to grab that cannon. I think the LGD, what I want to see this turn into is just a greater sort of macro objective lead now, right? Just the dragons, get that stacked up, try and move the Kalista around. Overall, I will say up in the mid lane, Cryin definitely getting better in a lot of these trades. And maybe that's something that Hacker and Cryin can leverage to get Residua.
We'll have to see if they can find an opportunity there. You know, Hacker already moving into that mid lane, making that attempt once, but Corki, not easy to gank anyway, plus you're a Poppy, so mid lane, not really your bread and butter when it comes to ganks. You do need a wall to use. Speaking of walls, though, Quake sliding along those walls to make it down in towards that bottom side, but Hacker making his way towards the bottom side as well. Last time around, we saw these junglers clash much earlier on in the game. This time, Hacker going to go for the Krugs, and it will be LGD starting that Drake once again. This is the classic. This is the one that LGD typically like. This is within our statistical analysis. Yes. LGD, 5th in the league for Drake's 15 minutes. 1st in the league for first Drake. So this is very much within the realms of normality for LGD.
Yes, not in upside down world anymore as we were game 1. LGD got the Herald, and then of course Ultra Prime picked up the first dragon. LGD, like we said, leveraging that Kalista priority and pressure. That's exactly what we wanted to see. Now the next big question is whether or not they can use some of that pressure to try and make a move up towards the top side. I think now that Fearness also has level 6, there's definitely an opportunity to try and pick on Zoom on a brief window where he's minion. This actually could be the window, but he's probably going to stack this up pretty quickly as he's just getting bullied out on the screen for now. But loads of options still there for LGD in terms of what they want to do for the greater standing of the map. They could just keep Assum down here in the 2v2. He's winning out pretty comfortably, up well over 10 CS. Choice is really theirs. It's more about how Ultra Prime want to try and react, if there's anything they can really do other than sit here and turtle, which I think is, for now, the next couple of minutes, probably their best option. I think if they try and contest the likes of, you know, Sejuani, Viego on the top side, or this Kalista, Amumu, or if it turns into a 3v3, I think they just lose unless they get really good chain CC onto those key targets, like Assum or like Quay, to try and shut down some of the early damage. If they can't do that, I think they just have to sit here and wait and just kind of read the map, see what LGD do.
Yeah, which is not ideal for Ultra Prime because their mid-game not necessarily the greatest. Good stun out from Cryin there. Denies a bit of aggression as JinJiao tried to move in. Fearness is here too. He's roamed down from the top side, wants to make some plays towards mid lane, but it's not going to happen. Blue buff spawning shortly, but not quite up just yet. As LGD move up towards this top side once more. Herald will be up in 35 seconds though, Jamada. Now we talked about Ultra Prime have a very, very good first Herald percentage. They have the highest in the league at 68%, right? They didn't manage to get it in game number 1. We'll see if they change things up and go for that again now in game number 2.
Yeah, okay. I mean, still 15 seconds left. Like you said, there's definitely an opportunity to swap that up. LGD don't have priority in the bottom side, and in the mid lane, Cryin, seeing this whenever it comes up on our screen, has been getting better under these trades, and it's definitely how the early matchup is supposed to go. There is also that very brief window where, you know, Corki's kind of sat awkwardly at that mana mune without the typically it's the Ludens we see second, And Cryin on a first item spike, definitely a little bit stronger than the Corki will be, but once you hit level 11, once you hit that Manamune with the Ludens, 2 items, Corki is very much online. I think that's the big scary thing for Ultra Prime, right? We spoke about how we expect them mostly to kind of sit on their hands here and try and find a good window to try and abuse. If they do that, they're just giving HiChao time on that Corki, and that's very scary. But set up towards this Herald, it's Ultra Prime with it.
Flash over the wall, Hackers going in! Immediately takes down Fearness. They are not messing around like last time where we saw LGD win the 3v3 for Herald. This time, Hackers being proactive and making things happen there. Elkis moved to the mid lane to clear waves. And I feel like at this point, Ultra Prime, they've guaranteed that Herald for themselves a much needed bit of gold.
The stats tell the future, Munch. They get the Herald in game 2 this time. As let's get a replay here and just get a good idea. I mean, it's just LDG. I guess they wanted to try and rotate down as a 2, kind of ignore Zoom. The issue is, you know, Hacker and Cryin are both already there, and Hacker just does the right thing, flashes over that Herald wall and gets the lockdown. I'm not sure whether or not he intended Fearness, but Fearness was definitely a lot more chunked out and the easier of the 2. Not only that, Quay had flash, so go for the flasher's target, who's already a little bit lower. Great target selection, in my opinion. And now with that Herald, big question is whether they want to put it, I suppose, right? You have Cryin in the mid lane winning out in this matchup already pretty heavily. You have Elk who's a little bit further behind. Do you want to try and push the laner who's already ahead, or do you want to try and buff up Elk, who can definitely be a huge late game menace? We've seen what Zeri's can do globally with some resources in their pocket. Up to
I mean, we've seen it in this league as well.
Yeah, I mean,
not very often. Because there's a reason that it's such a ridiculously high ban rate, because it can just take over the game. And, you know, we're talking about the poke of the Corki alongside of Zeri. Well, Viktor can kind of fulfill that role somewhat. Gnar a little bit if we're setting up outside of these neutral objectives for a long time. And speaking of, we have another Drake coming up in 25 seconds. Right now, it's looking like Quay is going to be the man on the scene, because Hacker all the way up on the top side of the map.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. So LGD, really in the expected long term, going to pick up the second dragon. I think also LGD has package. I think HiChao just picked that one up. He came out of base quite quick. Hacker Hex Flash over the wall for a potential creative pathing. The issue is Zoom doesn't have Mega.
I like it.
And Fearness is pretty full HP right now. I'm not sure whether or not they're really going to be able to burst him down 100-0. I think that's a little bit audacious, if you ask me. Seems like Hacker kind of agrees.
So far, but I wouldn't put it past him on the next wave, you know? I think maybe just going for this next wave, because you know that you'll be able to get Zoom up close to Mega Gnar there, but now spotted out as Fearness moved on over. Spotted Hacker, and it means Hacker will have to leave the situation. So won't get it in the end. We'll be able to grab himself some bonus chickens. But down at the bottom side, Elk and ShiauC, you got to get out of there, guys, because the whole of LGD moving on over with that package in tow.
Yeah, you had to respect the package. Is going to be used now just to get back to mid lane a little bit quicker to try and clear out this Herald. But the Herald gets dropped. Cryin is the one that gets the resources. We asked the question, try and get Elk back and alive up into this matchup, or give Cryin more of an advantage. It seems like we get Cryin with a little more resources in his back pocket. And honestly, against the Corki, I say this quite a lot. When you have these kind of, you know, heavy wave clear mages, Corki is now kind of fallen into that category, like the Viktor, the Azir. Dropping that mid lane tier 1, really important. Now it looks like they're finally going to go for this dive.
Okay, they go for the repeat play. They don't care about Mega Gnar. Hacker locked up Fearness with the damage. HiChao to finish him off with the Gatling gun. And, I mean, you called it, Jamada. He's too damn tanky and punished for it. Now ShiauC taking a few spears, but look at this, man. That's going to be 4 plates taken. No Herald needed down in this bottom side.
No Herald needed. LGD already making the cross-map play. Just trade out some resources on that. Yeah, top side from Ultra Prime, a little bit awkward. I mean, I just feel like Zoom needs Mega Gnar. You can see he's too tanky without it to beat Dove. If you had the chain TC and the extra damage from, you know, the ultimate, even the wallop, I feel like you're okay to just go for that chain TC. The ground even landed onto Fearness. He tried to use the Q away. Doesn't quite work out. Cryin.
Oh, Chaos Storm. Flash forced out in the mid lane here. That was Ghost used by Cryin as well. He really wanted to go aggressive onto HiChao. Will be Summoner for Summoner ultimately, but I'd say Ghost more valuable than the, less valuable than the Flash.
Yeah, absolutely. Flash being able to reposition Ghost just gets you to places slightly faster, gets you away from targets on occasion. JinJiao actually has a bit of a window if you wanted to attack the mid lane, but there's no one there for that setup. And ShiauC also just opened that back towards the mid lane, so not going to see any aggression there. No. I was kind of wondering where I'll take the point, but then I was
I
like,
thought you were still going there.
Yeah.
You kind of just stopped talking.
That's my bad. That's alright.
I'm going to be totally honest. I took a bite of a banana because I thought you were going to go into another point there. And then you just stopped talking. I was like, okay, my turn.
Okay,
all
right.
No,
I think
slowly
LGD...
but surely work through bananas as I'm casting. They're like really good slow release energy. It's what sports people do. I was watching Wimbledon, and they all go in between the games in Wimbledon. They all go sit down, have a single bite of banana, and then crack on. So I'm starting to do that. But as I took my single bite, you were like, okay, I'm just going to stop talking.
You're not allowed to. You're not allowed to eat bananas on my cast, because the games are supposed to be bananas. That's how it works.
True. This one has not been bananas.
No, it's been quite quiet.
I'm a little disappointed, honestly.
Yeah.
And like, especially with how the bottom lane started, it felt like it was going to be bananas. But ultimately, the reason it hasn't been is because it's only so aggressive you can go in this bottom lane. Like, I don't think Assum and JinJiao are in a position where they could start diving against an Alistar. So just taking these plates slowly but surely, stacking up the Drakes. Still very positive for LGD, but I agree as to the lack of ridiculous aggression out of that bottom side, you know?
Yeah, and I feel like for Ultra Prime, the scary part of like such a passive early game here is just how watch out on this Corki, right? It's a bit of a meme over in the ERLs where I'm from, where it's just it is just simply ERL Corki, smile, and it's teams over there. You know, typically the level of play is a little bit lower. Corki just kind of gets to scale up to that point where he's a monster almost every single game he's in. Now we could see a very similar situation.
You know, ShiauC happily walked up to like 4 people on his own last game as well. That's his ult now burnt with Drake up in 40 seconds. Like, ShiauC, I'm going to be totally honest, mate. That was probably not necessary.
No, I don't think it was either. I mean, wasn't even really going for vision. It seemed like maybe is like the thought process, but he didn't even drop anything by the looks of things.
No,
so
he didn't even drop a ward.
No, I think he's out of wards actually. I just got a brief look at his inventory.
He's there for the bans.
For the stat,
he's there for the bans. As was Elk, and Elk is not enjoying the banter. After all, he's been roasted alive. And, you know, you joined for the banter and suddenly you realize you've been outwitted. It's a disaster every time. In the meantime, Assum could just take the tower because the enemy bot lane is just running around river dying for some reason. So he's more than happy to just take a few minions.
Yeah, so you know when you asked me, 3 games or not? And I gave a pretty long-winded answer, but the TLDR of it was, my head says 3 games. Or did I? No, my head says 2, my heart said 3. And it seems like my heart's winning out in this one. I think we're
That's often the case in LPL.
It is. It seems to be. LGD have a pretty sizable lead. It's only 4,000 in gold, but it just feels a little bit more impressive when you take into context, you know, the game state. But what a great bandage toss. And there's just such little reaction time just because it's coming over so much terrain. You kind of just see the tip of it, and then it's kind of lights out. You get CC'd, even with both the summon spells, or just the cleanse coming out from Elk. There's no real place to try and reposition with the flash.
And it's a really, really smart play to use that specific bit of wall, right? Because it's a very high bit of wall, if that makes any sense. So animations are often hidden within the wall. Like, so many times you'll see a Syndra queue inside that wall to get a stun over there. The very famous play from Knight doing that in finals, like absolutely massive play against JDG a couple of years ago. You'll also see Oriana's hiding the ball in there to then just quickly move it in Shockwave, right? It's a really crucial bit of wall that often doesn't get talked about, but there are many plays that have come through that little chunk of tree.
Also, something you used to see whenever Viego would come into meta, though I think it's been entirely patched out, where if you cast Event Horizon out of the vision of enemy, so if you chucked it in a bush, they wouldn't see it. They would just get stunned. I don't think it works like that anymore, thankfully. But the same thing could be said from the terrain there. There's quite a few abilities like that, really, where it's just kind of hard to react to them when they fly over terrain, and those bits of terrain they fly over are a little bit lengthy. So really nice of JinJiao to kind of just abuse that brief mechanic here, as Quay moving down towards the bottom side. Zoom has Mega, but the issue is he's used the ultimate, and that's a long lane to run down.
And there is no turret, but Zoom will use the crunch, gets out to safety here. Dodged away from the ultimate out from Fearness, but cost him his flash, ultimately. And now in the mid lane, this Herald will go down. Ultra Prime getting themselves a tower, a much needed one as well, because, you know, still down in gold. It's about 3,000, just under. in favor of LGD. And I think Ultra Prime going to be very happy to take that mid tier 1 down, because Drake going to be coming up in 3 minutes time. They need to do everything they can over the next 3 minutes to vie for control of the bottom side of the map. If they could get the bot tier 1, that would be ideal.
Yeah, I think it would, but the other thing to track realistically, I think, is just item accumulation and where people sit at the moment in their item completions and what that kind of means for their champions, right? Because you look over at Assum, he's 2 items. He's got the Gwyn Sweep, he's got the Shield Bow. Right. He's ready to fight, like, for the rest of the game as things stand. You know, Kalista obviously technically does get stronger, but in terms of how you have historically seen Kalista, it's 2 item spike, and that's when she really takes over and she kind of just gets stronger pending the game. For Zeri at the moment, maybe Elk can make it to a 2nd item in time, but I think he just picked up that Zeal, so I don't think it's really going to happen. And in the mid lane...
Yeah, he did. As you start the conversation, Elk was literally a 1 item to Assum's 2. I was like, oh Lord, so, please tell me
it's looking really
Elk
bad.
Hasn't reset in a while.
And the other thing to definitely note is the mid lane differential as well, because Cryin has the crown, and I think he's got a needlessly large rod, which is pretty much building into 1 or 2 things, which is Shadow Flame or Death Cap, and those items aren't cheap, whereas ShiauC already has the Ravenous Hydra with the Muramana, which is going to transform very shortly. It's definitely a slightly more unorthodox item path. I feel like Corki's typically go for the Ludens and then the Hydra, so I wonder how that's going to impact his damage output in general, but still, you know, stats to stats, lifesteal into some of the poke, I think, is also the very crucial thing. You know, from Elk, from sort of like max range, death lasers maybe, from the Viktor. Still going to feel okay. Yeah. And at the end of the day, he's Corki. It feels like you can build anything on that champion, and he's still going to deal damage. Like, you could go like Frozen Heart, Randuins, and I assume he's still going to one-shot anybody he jumps on. It's just the nature of the champion.
It's literally just build what you like. So long as you're hitting your rockets, you'll probably do all right. Ultra Prime, though, grouping up on the bottom side right now, having to move away as JinJiao fights for vision here. A little unsure, thought he was getting collapsed upon. A minute until this Drake. So Jamada, talk me through the game plan here, because package is in base. It's 3 Drakes for LGD. Ultra Prime, realistically, they've got to fight for this Drake, or they might just lose the game to Soul.
Yeah, I think the problem is that Ultra Prime are kind of in a very awkward position where in the game state right now, they can't feasibly contest this dragon, but they're just going to have to, right? Because if they lose that permanent buff of their Soul, I feel like the immediate pressure that the additional stats are going to give, it's just going to be too much to really try and look towards contesting a Baron or any of the future objectives.
How do they do it,
for
though?
that matter?
How does Ultra Prime make this happen?
They have to just try and blow up Assum somehow. They have to try and get on top of him, but the engage options are just so limited. They have to like flash forward, get on top, and just chain CC him down to death. But LGD are always going to try and protect him, and Assum, look where he is. He's just positioning all the way towards the back of the fight. He knows he is the key target for Ultra Prime, and if he stays alive, that's all he's got to do.
No way does JinJiao do it again. He's in the same spot once again. Doesn't find a carry, doesn't find a target that he wants. He's going to back away. Here we go. Flashes forward for the 4-man. Package across everyone. Assum still chilling on the backline as he chases down Zoom. A triple for ShiauC on the Corki, and Assum turns it into 2 as well. That was a massacre.
Massacre doesn't even come close. It's a 5-4-0, and it all comes off the back of JinJiao sitting in the exact same spot he sat in about 6 or 7 minutes ago to find the pick onto Elk, and he just sets up beautifully. That was a not-so engage. Let's just get a look at it immediately. Bandage toss into flash. Hacker is too close to respond with the steadfast presence, and the Corki package goes through everybody. It still hits Elk on the back line, and ShiauC just flashes forward and follows through with that one. And on the bottom side of the map, because the Corki package split up the fight so well, it just allows Assum to step forward and eliminate the remaining targets of Ultra Prime. What an amazing fight from LGD, and they picked up the Baron off the back. Yeah.
I mean, just instant deletion of so many players there with the package and the Curse of the Sad Mummy combined. Like, there's just mega damage across the team there. And I mean, like, you know, we were debating about Ludens versus Hydra and all that kind of stuff. I guess when you've got an Amumu ult like that, Hydra's definitely going to get its value. The cleave damage was absolutely absurd. And now, with a Baron off the back of that play, you know, they eradicated everyone just as the 20-minute mark basically knocked over. Feels real good for LGD. Almost 10,000 gold up.
Like, dude, before that dragon fight, they were maybe 2,500 gold up. Now they almost sit 10,000. It's such an explosion of gold, and now the worst part about it is there were so many standing towers left up on the map, right? Top tier 1 still up and available. Bottom side, or mid lane tier 1 was up, which they've just taken. Now the gold is just going to start blowing up even more, up to 10,000 now. And LGD, they kind of outrange Ultra Prime, right? With the Corki, they can just sit there, allow HiChao to just poke. Zoom now also in a bit of trouble because he's in mini Gnar.
Oh, Fearness goes for the dive here. Happy to tank up and Quay, getting the resets as well. Turns into that Gnar. And crucially as well, you may have the kind of poke mage in the mid lane from LGD, but it's Corki. So he still does work on those towers as well. So it's not even like LGD don't have siege either. Like, these guys can keep this up all day long. Still a minute on the Baron as you see Fearness TP to the bottom side and now up, have to scramble to defend that bot tier 2, but I don't think it's happening. They're just going to defend elsewhere.
Yeah, what an efficient Baron from LGD. They pick up 5 towers in the space of 2 minutes. I think that really just goes to show how far ahead they are. With picking up
I'm
that
just going to
Baron,
call it
being
now,
able to just
Jamada.
take down
I
somebody.
think LGD might just try and end the game here.
Yeah, you know, it wouldn't surprise me. The tempo is just, like, so in their favor right now. They have just swung this gold lead so high, so fast. If they go for the end off the back of the Baron, wouldn't be too surprised. I agree with you, Joe. I think Ultra Prime don't really have much in the tank.
He saw the steadfast presence used, so now JinJiao can look for an engage. Elk is playing with fire, being that close to the Amumu. Kiss the Sad Mummy is available. Bot inhib taken. Moving up towards the mid lane as well. Supers enabled in 1 lane. It'll be 2 in just a second as well. Might as well make it 3 if they can move up towards the top side. Ultra Prime, though, trying to contest Zoom. About to turn Mega, but not really got a way into the fight. That's an ult coming out from Fearness just to deny the engage from Zoom. LGD back away. They respect the Mega Gnar. They can still go. With the minions in the top side here, minions in the mid lane. They've run out of Baron. Is that going to be enough for them to reset? I'm not so sure. They don't look like they're backing off just yet. Hack it down to half.
HiChao has package, I think. He just based, maybe he finished up the Ludens. He could also have package based on the timing. No, not just yet. I think he's got another minute left on the respawn. Fearness a little chunked out, but I mean, second inhibitor's gone. Oh, hi, JinJiao.
Zoom is gonzo. JinJiao, if he doesn't get an MVP for this game, I don't know what else he can do. He's been miraculous for the side of LGD, and we called it correctly. They want to get out of here. They want to end this game. 26 minutes on the clock as they look towards a top lane inhibitor. That's another pick onto Elk. Hacker trying to escape with his life, but Quay doesn't want to let him out. Ults over the wall, and Hacker gets a little bit of revenge for what has occurred this game. The top inhib will be taken just while they wait for some minion waves, but at the end of the day, LGD coming back in game number 2 with a vengeance, Jamada.
That was plain and simple a schmacking, I think, from LGD. Ultra Prime didn't really have a leg to stand on, to be honest with you. A little bit of a skirmish going on before the Nexus falls, but it's gonna blow up. Fearness gets 1 more kill for himself. Yeah, I just feel Ultra Prime just didn't really have anything to lean on, you know? They go for the Zeri first pick, but there's no real agency pick up in the support role, right? It's the Alistar. I feel like Alistar, historically, it's always been about those flanks. It's always been about sort of re-engages or disengaging. That's what he really thrives at, I feel like, in this version of League of Legends. And LGD just abused that fact so well. They abused the level 1 beautifully. They split the map as well to ensure that Assum had as comfortable a lane as possible.
Yeah.
And they just snowballed it perfectly. 4-dragon game into a Baron. There was just nothing it felt like Ultra Prime could do just from the draft.
Yeah, absolutely brutal. And I love the fact that, as you say, LGD didn't like rush things in the early game. Just stack those drakes up. They had the advantage in the 2v2. Kalista was just naturally picking these plates up just because of how far ahead of the Zeri they were. And it feels like, I mean, there was really not a lot Ultra Prime could do. The way that this, I mean, honestly, the big conclusion I'm drawing here is get rid of this Viktor, Ultra Prime. The Viktor did absolutely nothing all game. Like, he kind of won lane early, pushed HiChao out of lane a couple of times, but no kills came out of that. And beyond that, really didn't exist. So I want to see Cryin. Like, Twist of Fate is available. I know it's not meta right now, but it's an option, and Cryin is an absolute beast on it. I feel like play for something global, maybe even the Galio. I don't know. Play for something where you can contest the skirmish that LGD is bringing to the table, because that's really how Ultra Prime won in game number 1.
Yeah, I will say I think that Corki pick as well in particular really shut down a lot of like options that Ultra Prime kind of had at their fingertips, because it's like you're saying the Corki, the Galio, The problem is, yes, it's all well and good if you actually get the map pressure and set that up, but then Corki still kind of gets to do the same thing, right? I feel like actually, despite Cryin not necessarily getting to do too much, the one thing he was able to do is kind of shut down one-to-one the Corki early on in lane, but it wasn't really ever enough to stop him from hitting his items. It wasn't like Ultra Prime were playing around him, and that was just the unfortunate reality here for Ultra Prime, and it's kind of reflected in the damage. I mean, I feel like Corki always deals the most damage on the teams he's on, to be honest with you. But yeah, the fact that Haichao was able to just kind of come online in that second to last sort of team fights onwards, it was absolute carnage and nothing that they could really do. I feel like, again, LGD had all of the agency options at their fingertips to play with. And JinJiao, we have to really highlight it. Like you said, if he doesn't get MVP, it's daylight robbery for me.
Yeah, honestly. Look at this KDA. 14 KDA coming out from JinJiao. I mean, the pick onto Elk using that Dragon Pit and then an immediate, like, later on in the game, a 4-man Kiss the Sad Mummy using the exact same spot. Just beautiful from JinJiao. Then obviously finding that last pick onto Zoom to blow the base open as well. I feel like if he is not the MVP out of this one, like I said in the cast, I don't know what else he could do. I really don't. There was nothing else within his power to be able to find that. And also, we're not even talking about the fact that they also won lane at level 1 off the back of his engages. So, like, give the man an MVP. That's all I'm saying.
He single-handedly won them the last 2 dragons as well. Like the list of accolades just keeps on falling in place for him. Yeah, it was an excellent game from him, and hopefully we can get to see that level of performance again, trying to avoid those game 1 woes because LGD looked fantastic in this game.
They certainly did, and hopefully with Ultra Prime having a really one-sided game 1 and LGD having a really one-sided game 2, maybe game 3, it was an absolute barn burner. The only way you guys are gonna find out is